Okay, so we've got it all figured out why we're getting a low voltage on the power supply. Went ahead and replaced the capacitors there and one of the power rectifiers, and it seems to address the issue. Let's go ahead and let's get a keyboard hooked up, go ahead and boot into Mac OS, and just make sure that this machine is stable enough to actually be usable. What the? Dun, dun, dun! Let's talk about retro brighting. Welcome to Ron's Computer Videos. Hey, let's talk about something that everybody with a classic Macintosh has had to deal with at one point or another. And that's yellowing plastic. This right here is a Apple keyboard. This came out right around the same time as the Mac II, sort of as a cost abbreviated model versus the Saratoga. I think this is model M0106, something like that. But as you can very clearly see, the difference between the plastics here, where the cheaper plastic that Apple used on the case bodies and the space bars definitely yellows much, much quicker than, I believe, what these ABS keys that they have made part of this design. So I think what we're going to do today, nice and bright and shiny outside, Sally Beauty Supply is no longer on total lockdown. So let's go ahead and let's take advantage of the day and let's do some retro brighting. Gosh, you can definitely see all of that sun damage when you look here at the back. Much, much brighter and wider compared to the front. But I know that we can do much better. Probably it's going to take a little bit of magic, but I think we're going to get there. Let's go ahead and get this disassembled. Okay, get the back off there. Gosh, I love these Alps keyboards. Very carefully work that keycap up off the top of the switch there, making sure that we don't do anything to bend up our keyboard stabilizer. There is a pin that is over here on the other side that is molded into the bottom of that keycap. Just make sure that when you're lifting that you don't put more pressure on one side or the other. You will snap this off, or you will damage your keycap, or you will damage this 30-plus year old little doodad of plastic under here. All you can do is be extremely, extremely careful. A keyboard or a key remover is probably not going to help you a lot. Just patience and just going slow. It's like most things in life. Another very common problem on these keyboards is this very thin little strip of plastic right up here that kind of rides next to the power key. Mine broke off shortly after I got this keyboard several years ago, just because of previous use by the owner. It was snapped on one side and it was kind of pushed down at an angle, and trying to fix it, it broke the other side off. Whoops, probably be good if I actually got that the right way around. Probably as part of this repair, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of CA on that just to go ahead and secure that in place. But for right now, let's get everything outside and let's get prepped for our retro brighting. Alright, welcome to Ron's Computer Patio. Let's talk about the stuff that we're going to need for this project. We're obviously going to need whatever that we're going to try to retro bright, plus the following. We're going to need our peroxide. This is the stuff you can get at Sally Beauty Supply. It's they call it developer, but it's really just liquid hydrogen peroxide. This is the strongest stuff they sell. You're also going to need some hot water. You're going to need some kind of container that you're going to go ahead and hold your project in. You can get these clear tubs at a restaurant supply store. It's really nice because it's very, very clear. There's not a lot of distortion, so that way that your sunlight can get in all around it. This is something I always watch David Murray's videos, and I'm like, does Texas not have a restaurant supply store? Optionally, you're going to need plastic wrap, especially if you want to try to keep your water from evaporating, and you want to try to keep your heat in from your hot water. And this last bit is kind of optional, but I've always found that it gives me the best results. Well, we still got a few good hours of light. Let's go ahead and get our project started. First things first, let's think about how we're going to do the most good with our materials and our sunlight. Sunlight is pretty key on this. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is, since there's a little bit of yellowing kind of around the back side, this tub is not going to be absolutely big enough to fit every square inch of this project. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to stack everything so that way that I can make the most use of my space, trying to keep everything down so I can keep things submerged, and then try to make sure that everything that is discolored is going to get the most amount of light. Let's go ahead, let's get our other little bits and bobs in there, and then let's go ahead and get our peroxide in, and let's get our water in. Since the peroxide can hurt you if you get it in your eyes or anything, it was probably a good idea to wear some sort of protective eye covering while you put in your peroxide. But I am going to go through, and I'm going to put the water in first, just so that way that I'm not pouring hot water right on top of cold peroxide in the off chance that something were to splash. So we've got a good amount of water in there right now. Let's go ahead, let's get our peroxide in there. One bottle. There's the 2 bottles. And it looks like we are going to have to top this off with a little bit of hot water. So let me run inside, let me get that, and I will be right back. Alright, our top off batch of water is going in now. We want to just bring this up where absolutely everything is submerged. We do not want to dilute our peroxide too much. We do seem to be having a little bit of floating. We can fix that by just giving a little tappa to knock those bubbles out. Okay, so we have everything submerged. Everything looks good. Now again, I said earlier that this next part is kind of optional, but I try to go ahead, keep a little bit of that heat in there. If the plastic dips out down in the middle, gets on your stuff, it's okay. It's all right. Happy little accident. Okay. Get our seal around the edge here. Oh, those empty bottles. Trying to ruin my shot. Okay. Plastic torn off here. There you have it. We've already got a little bit of condensation in there just because of the heat. That's okay. I know some people pull the Apple logos off and stuff like that. I did not do that on that because, again, this is just an extra keyboard for me. It's a bit of an experiment. I do want to see if it does cause much discoloration on that Apple logo. And worst case scenario, this might be a fun side project to maybe 3D print a color replacement. Okay, so we have everything ready to go. We're going to leave this for a couple of hours. We'll come back and check it. You always can come out and do a little shaky. Make sure you don't have any kind of bubbles or anything that's built up on the surface of your stuff. But we'll give this some time and we'll see. Okay, everybody, here we are at the end of the day. We've used up all the available sunlight that we could throw at this thing. Let's see how it looks. Let's get our plastic out of here. Get that out of the way. I will say that I think we got pretty positive results. We're really going to know best when we get these things inside and kind of take a look. I'm going to say there's a little bit of a sheen kind of still to it. But again, this method is not maybe as kind of as rough and tough as St. Javier's method. But let's take things inside. Let's go ahead and get things rinsed off and we will check it out. Probably it's also a good idea to maybe also now talk about what you should do with all of your stuff. Now keep in mind, this is heavily diluted. this peroxide, but at the same time it's still probably hazardous to wildlife and things like that, so you do not want to leave this somewhere out where maybe neighborhood animals or anything are going to drink it. But it might be possible to, again, I'm not an environmental expert, but I would say if you had maybe like some cracks in your concrete in your driveway or something like that, or you have an area in your driveway where you've got something growing like moss or something and you want to get those things out, it's an anti-biological, so it'll definitely go through and kill that. Maybe grass coming up through your sidewalk or whatever. But basically, before you dispose of anything, check with what your local guidelines are and follow that. Okay, so we've got all of our stuff cleaned up outside. We're going to go ahead and do our inside cleanup now. So, probably going to absolutely want to rinse all of your parts, so that way that you can get them drying, so you can go ahead and get your device reassembled. Extra careful with our little chipped piece. Make sure we don't drop that down the drain. Can't forget to rinse our tub. Alright, let's get this drying. Okay, a little bit of time has passed and we have our stuff mostly dry. I'm going to go through and I'm going to use a little bit of compressed air to just get the screw holes and stuff cleaned out. Make sure it's over by our ADB connections, if that's nice and dry. We're not going to plug this. We're not going to plug this in immediately, so we got a little bit of time. So, all right, let me go ahead. Let's do the front side, and then let's go ahead and check and see how we did. One moment of truth is going to be to go ahead and compare the space bar to see how well that got cleaned compared to the others. And I think if you were to look at our before and after, which I might have a flip-flop here. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. It might even be a little bit brighter than the rest of these keys, which probably do just need a little bit of cleanup. You can see some little funkies down in there. So that'll be something else I probably will get on doing here shortly. But let's go ahead and I'm going to put the case over the top, and we'll do a flippy flop on that too, just to see how much better it looks. And I'm going to say night and day. So this worked out really, really well. I don't see any discoloration on the Apple, but I mean, your mileage is going to vary, because I'm sure that just like everything else Apple did, the dyes and the plastics and stuff changed over time. I'm not sure what the underlying plastic of this is made out of at ABS, but I just figured this would be a fun experiment, just to see, because I know a lot of people are very, very diligent about pulling those off because they're worried about the dyes bleeding, or they're worried about getting some kind of damage on that. So it seems to be, at least on this specific model of keyboard, of this week of manufacture, this plant that they were manufactured in, that it's okay. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this back together, and then we'll see how it looks. And like magic, we're back to our wide shot. Let's go ahead and get this stuck back together. We got to make sure that these, the ADB ports are kind of in position and everything before you start getting anything too comfortable. While we have this part of the case off, this is probably also a really good time to go ahead and address that break in the plastic, and also get our space bar back on. Mostly because this is only going to be more difficult when there's more things in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can go ahead and get the guides started here. Oops. Of course, this is probably going to be 5 minutes of fail trying to get this all kind of squared away. But, you know, spudgers really help. Hey, what do you know? Oh, wow, that went really, really well. Let me double check that with a flashlight. Make sure everything is where it needs to be. And, no, of course not. Of course not. That was too easy. That was too easy. Like I said, 5 minutes of fail. Oh, what do you know? Oh, I guess you gotta just, like, fall into it on accident. Flashlight, yep. No, it looks really good. Color looks good. It's got a couple little nicks and some shiny wear and stuff on it. But, you know, these keyboards, it's been around a good long time, so let's go ahead and let's talk about what we're going to do about this plastic up here at the top. My first impression would be to use like a two-part epoxy if this was somewhere that was going to be maybe more actively sort of flexed and all. But this is just living kind of up at the top of the keyboard between the power key and this top row of keys. So I think just a tiny, tiny bit of CA is going to kind of get us where we want to go. But before we do anything, we want to absolutely verify the orientation of this part before we start trying to stick anything together. Because that makes for a bad day when you glue things in incorrectly. And it's, you know, honestly, it's pretty sturdy. So I think once we glue this, we should be able to just go ahead and reassemble. So, okay, that looks good. We're going to go ahead and use our spudger to make sure that if it's laying flat, and it sure seems to be. Let's look here on the top. Yeah. And again, that's got just the tiniest little bit of proudness there. And that might be something I can just deal with a Sharpie, or sorry, an X-Acto later. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's just make sure that everything sits and fits. And whoops, I guess you got to follow the design of the keyboard, and you put it all back together. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, that fits real nice. We got our little gap there. Love that Snow White design language. Okay, let's make sure that we don't have any CA that has dripped, and that we'd be laying our nice clean keyboard in that. So we'll flip our work paper towel over. Go ahead and make sure we're still all fitting pretty good together here. And we have 2 screws there. Oh, there's 2 screws there, and all those screws. Let's go ahead and we'll get our. Not going to super tighten that one. I'm going to work from the ends and then from the middle, so that way I can make sure that I don't have something that is off center. And if I over tighten one of these and then it turns out the other end is not going to play ball with me, then I don't want to break any plastic or anything. So remember, okay, I've got the center tightened up, and it is just tight. It is not like a quarter, you know how it is, a quarter turn past tight and then round it off. We're not going to do that. We're just going to get this just enough, give our keyboard a little bit of grippy grip, and or give our screws a little bit of grippy grip. Hopefully that'll make it nice and won't flex on us too much. Okay, well, gosh, that sure looks pretty. Of course, nothing ever is perfect. I can see in the background on this some little haze where you know, it's never going to be 100% like factory. But I would say that compared to where we started, that this is a pretty good result. And I think that this will look really nice when paired back with our project that we're working on earlier. But I guess we're out of time, so we'll return back to our LC2 recap project at a future video. And remember, Apple II, forever.